Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Down Commander. Today we're going to be featuring a deck I'm calling the WarGames combo. So kick off your shoes and let's head into the deck dojo. Hey there Planeswalkers, welcome back to the Top Down Commander Deck Dojo. I'm your sensei, Jank Lord Extraordinaire, the Magus of the Salt himself. Today we're going to ask some important questions. True or false? Yes or no? Shall we play a game? Seriously though, today's deck is going to make our opponents scratch their heads. I'm all about interactivity in Magic. It's why I play Commander. So any way I can get my friends involved in the game, I see as a win. Today's deck is all about giving our opponents the ability to make choices throughout the game, all the while knowing that no matter what they choose, the outcome will be the same. Like the 80s classic WarGames, the only winning move is not to play the game. They'll learn that soon enough. Let's start off by looking at the top-down commander for today's deck. Fact or Fiction is an instant for 3 and a blue that says, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Okay, I know Fact or Fiction can't be our commander, but this card is the basis for the whole deck. It's all about putting the choice in our opponent's hands. That is, until we get to our game-ending combo and they realize we've been manipulating them the entire time. But since we need a legendary creature to command this deck, here goes. Kess Dissident Mage is a 3/4 human wizard for 1 of anything, red, blue, and black. Kess has flying and says, during each of your turns you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Kess is a monster of a commander, and can be tuned to be at the helm of an extremely competitive deck. In fact, she's a bit more competitive than I'd normally like, but Kess is going to let us reuse spells that our opponents put in our graveyard, and she is essential to our namesake combo. But I'm getting ahead of myself. With the commander out of the way, let's kick off today's deck tech. We start off with a very straightforward ramp package. First up, as per usual, are Soul Ring and Wayfarer's Bauble. Then we've got Felwar Stone and Arcane Signet as some of the best 2-mana rocks for a 3-color deck. And we finish up the ramp package with all 3 talismans and all 3 signets in these colors. For card draw, we start off with Fact or Fiction, Fortune's Favor, and Epiphany at the Drownyard. Fortune's Favor is 3 and a blue for an instant that says, target opponent looks at the top 4 cards of your library and separates them into a face-down and a face-up pile. Put one of those piles into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Epiphany at the Drownyard lets us reveal the top X cards and make 2 face-up piles ourselves, but an opponent chooses which pile we get and which goes into the yard. Next up are Covenant of Minds and Murmurs from Beyond. With Covenant, we will reveal the top 3 cards of our library. An opponent may choose to put those cards into our hand. If they don't, we put those cards into our graveyard and draw 5 cards. Murmurs from Beyond will have us reveal the top 3 cards of our library. An opponent chooses one, we put that card into the graveyard and the others into our hand. After that, we've got Manifold Insights and Allure of the Unknown. Manifold Insights is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that's going to dig us pretty deep into our deck. We're going to reveal the top 10 cards of our deck. Each opponent will choose one of those cards. We'll put the chosen cards into our hand and the rest on the bottom of our library. Allure of the Unknown will have us reveal the top 6 cards of our library. An opponent will get to cast one of them for free, and we will get the other 5 into our hand. Risk Factor and Browbeat are both going to allow us to draw 3 cards unless an opponent wants to take 4 or 5 damage respectively. Sin Prodder says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent may put that card into your graveyard. If they do, Sin Prodder deals damage to them equal to that card's converted mana cost. Otherwise, put that card into your hand. When Combustible Gearhulk enters the battlefield, target opponent can let us draw 3 cards. If not, we mill 3 and Combustible Gearhulk deals damage to that opponent equal to the combined converted mana cost of those cards. Unesh Cryosphinx Sovereign and Sphinx of Athun both have Fact or Fiction effects when they enter the battlefield, and Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths, does an impression of Fortune's Favor. Now we move on to Reduce, Reuse, Recycle. First up are Mission Briefing and Mystic Retrieval. Mission Briefing will let us surveil 2 and then cast an instant or sorcery from our graveyard. Mystic Retrieval will put an instant or sorcery from our graveyard back into our hand, plus it has flashback. Past in Flames and Underworld Breach are both mass recursion. Past in Flame works for just instants and sorceries, and it has flashback itself. Underworld Breach is the new red Yawgmoth's Will. This slot could easily go to Yawg's Will, but I've been wanting to try this card out, and at a fraction of the cost, this definitely seems like a good deck for it. Stitch Together returns a creature to our hand unless we have Threshold, which is easy in a deck filled with Fact or Fiction effects. Boneyard Parlay is the Reanimator version of Fact or Fiction. For 7 mana, you get to exile 5 creatures from any graveyards, an opponent separates them into 2 piles, and then you get to put one of those piles onto the battlefield under your control, and the rest back into their respective graveyards. Next up is my favorite recursion spell in the deck, Shrouded Lore. Shrouded Lore is going to let an opponent choose what card we get back from our graveyard to our hand, but if we don't like what they chose, we can pay 1 black mana and make them choose a different card. We can repeat this process as many times as we have the mana. This is a great way to demonstrate to our opponents the point of this deck, that they don't really have a choice after all. And Echo of Eons can serve as a get-out-of-jail-free card, putting our graveyard back into our library and drawing us 7 cards. It also has flashback, allowing us to use it from the yard in a pinch. Izzet, Chronarch, Possessed, Scab, and Archaeomancer all return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. Phyrexian Delver will reanimate a creature from our yard to the battlefield, but we lose life equal to the reanimated creature's converted mana cost. Next up, let's move on to some unique choices for removal. We begin our Sophie's Choice section with Breaking Point, Coercive Portal, and Killing Wave. Breaking Point will destroy all creatures unless any player wants to take 6 damage. Coercive Portal is going to have everyone vote on our upkeep for Carnage or Homage. If Carnage wins, destroy all non-land permanents, otherwise we draw a card. And Killing Wave is X and a black and says, for each creature, its controller sacrifices it unless they pay X life. Next up are Do or Die, Capital Punishment, and Volcanic Offering. Do or Die is going to let us separate all creatures target opponent controls into 2 piles and force them to choose which one to keep and which to destroy. Capital Punishment is another vote card. This time it's Death or Taxes. Each opponent discards a card for each Taxes vote and sacrifices a creature for each Death vote. Volcanic Offering is going to let us play a little bit of politics. It can't target us, but it's going to essentially let us destroy 2 non-basic lands we don't control and deal 7 damage to 2 creatures we don't control. We just have to let an opponent pick some of the targets. Then we've got the Eldest Reborn, Torment of Hailfire, and Choice of Damnations. The Eldest Reborn is a saga. The first chapter has each opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. The second chapter has each opponent discard a card, and the final chapter lets us reanimate a creature or planeswalker from any graveyard. Torment of Hailfire is a beast of an X spell, forcing each opponent to repeat the following process X times. Take 3 damage unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Choice of Damnations is a really cool on-flavor spell for this deck. Target opponent chooses a number. You may have that opponent lose that much life or sacrifice all but that many permanents. This is a fun, underplayed card and perfect for this deck. Plague Crafter and Fleshbag Marauder both enter the battlefield and force each player to sacrifice a creature of their choice. Desecration Demon gives any opponent the choice to sacrifice a creature each combat. If they do, tap Desecration Demon and put a +1/+1 counter on it. Mogus, God of the Slaughter, says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Mogus deals 2 damage to them unless they sacrifice a creature. And Archfiend of Depravity is going to have each opponent sacrifice all but 2 of their creatures on their end step. Counter spells are kind of like removal, and we're running 3. Dash Hopes, Split Decision, and Narset's Reversal. Dash Hopes is going to counter target spell unless any player pays 5 life. Split Decision is another vote card. The choices this time are Denial or Duplication. If Denial wins, counter target spell. Otherwise, copy that spell instead. Narset's Reversal is going to bounce target spell back to hand, and we're going to copy it instead. Always remember, be careful what you cast. Next up, we've got a few more generic choices for our opponents to make. To add to the performative nature of this deck, we've got Captive Audience and Cruel Entertainment. Captive Audience is going to come in under an opponent's control and give them a series of unfortunate choices to make each turn. Cruel Entertainment is going to let us choose 2 players to control each other during their next turns. Dance, my puppets, dance! Propaganda and Kazul Tyrant of the Cliffs are going to make our opponents pay if they choose to attack us. Kazul is especially spicy, because if they choose not to pay the 3 for attacking us, we get a 3/3 ogre we can use to chump block. And lastly, we're running the ultimate demon of the choice deck, Expropriate. For 9 mana, each player chooses time or money. Take an extra turn for each time vote, and take control of an opponent's permanent if they vote money. Pro tip: always choose money, unless I'm casting Expropriate. Then ignore this and just go ahead and give me extra turns. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the WarGames combo. With Kess on the battlefield, we're going to cast Intuition. Intuition is going to let us search our library for 3 cards. An opponent chooses one of those cards to put into our hand, and the other 2 go into our graveyard. So what cards are we going to get? Reanimate, Demonic Consultation, and Thassa's Oracle. Reanimate is 1 black to return target creature from the graveyard to the battlefield, and we lose life equal to that card's converted mana cost. Demonic Consultation is going to let us name a card, and then we flip cards from our library into the graveyard until we hit that card and put it into our hands. If we choose a card that isn't in our deck, we'll flip our entire library into the yard. And Thassa's Oracle is going to enter the battlefield, and we scry X, where X is our devotion to blue. Then, if there are no cards in our library, we win the game. Here's where the fun comes in. Barring interaction, no matter what our opponents choose, we win the game. Don't believe me? I'll prove it. If they put Reanimate into our hand, we cast it, reanimating Thassa's Oracle. With the Oracle trigger on the stack, we cast Demonic Consultation from our graveyard, thanks Kess, naming Forest, or something else not in our deck, and flip our entire deck into the yard. The Oracle trigger resolves, and we win the game. If they put Demonic Consultation into our hand, we cast Reanimate from the yard, again thanks to Kess, targeting our Oracle, and with the trigger on the stack, cast the Demonic Consultation and win the game. If they give us Thassa's Oracle, we simply cast the Oracle from our hand and the Demonic Consultation from the yard, and yada yada yada, you guessed it, we win the game. So what did we learn from this? The only winning move is not to play the game. So after all this, what is Sensei's top pick of the deck? Drum roll please. Demonic Consultation. This card is absolutely bonkers with Kess, and this Sensei's Pick comes with a warning. This card is so strong, it often wins the game out of nowhere. Even without the combo, you can use Demonic Consultation to find Thassa's Oracle, then cast the Oracle, and recast Consultation from the graveyard thanks to Kess. This interaction is what made me take out Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, which also has a similar combo with Demonic Consultation, and is even harder to interact with in my opinion, being a Planeswalker. Its strength almost makes the deck lose its fun flavor and just become an obnoxious combo deck that's hard to interact with. So, if you choose to play this deck, be very careful, especially with this card in particular. That being said, it is very good, and it's very hard to lose when you cast it. There's nothing particularly noteworthy in the mana base this week, so I'm just going to skip on over to something I haven't done in a while, the Budget Report. Deck prices for this channel are calculated using TCGplayer.com and optimized for heavily played and damaged cards because we're playing jank and you don't need to break the bank on jank. Today's deck is going to set you back $209.64 as of the time of this recording. A fourth of that deck cost is going to be caught up in 3 cards in particular: Intuition, Demonic Consultation, and Expropriate. If you wanted to take those cards out, the deck would be under $150. And you wouldn't lose too much on the flavor or theme of the deck. Expropriate causes lots of feel-bads around some tables, and Demonic Consultation we already discussed as being incredibly overpowered. Plus, if you take out Demonic Consultation, you might as well take out Intuition as well. And that's the deck. Thanks for checking out this episode of Top Down Commander. If you like what you saw, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and share this with all your friends. If you want to see the full deck list, you can head on over to the Architect link in the description. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Magus of the Salt or on Facebook over at Top Down Commander. Leave me a comment down below with what you thought of today's deck, and until next time, keep kicking ass!